we're going to now look at some smaller companies that kind of grow up assuming data science and working directly with it. And in a sense, kind of, it's an existential reality of data science. You've got to have the stuff to be alive and do what these companies do. These aren't tweaking the existing business. They're building off of data science. And one of the interesting things about that, of course, is they're doing things that aren't taught in textbooks that are going to get taught in textbooks. They're making real a lot of stuff that is currently theoretical. And so I think Cameran is going to lead this. Is that right?
Yes.
I should let you take over then and
Perfect.
introduce your panel.
Absolutely.
Right?
We're actually just going to all come on stage.
Okay, they're all just going to come on stage, and I'm going to get off it. Cameron, introduce yourself and your panel.
I wasn't going to have to go on stage. I guess we should have
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Cameran Hetrick, and I'm here with a great panel of data scientists to give you guys an honest view of what our introduction kind of said, the sexiest job of the 21st century. We want to give you a real good view of what our day-to-day lives look like and what we actually do in the world of data science. We're going to start this off with a few questions that we prepared ahead of time that we thought would be top of mind for the audience. And then we'll turn it over to you guys and let you guys ask questions of us and see what we can come up with. And we might pose a couple questions at the end for you. So before we go into a little bit deeper into this, I want to let the panel introduce themselves. So Jonathan, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm the head of data science at the Social Capital Partnership. We're a venture capital firm down in Palo Alto. I've been there for about 9 months now. My role is really about helping our portfolio companies use their data to help them win, right? Like if you're a little company, you need to generate success somehow, and usually you have data, and usually that's somehow, important for your ability to win, so I help them figure that out, what that means, which is a variety of things. I've been there for about 9 months now. Prior to that, I was at Facebook for the last 4.5 years building out the data science and analytics function. When I joined Facebook back in 2009, there were, I think, 5 of us doing this stuff. By the time I left, there were like 130 of us. So, all those people who are looking for jobs, go to Facebook. They might hire you. Anyway, so we built out that whole thing. I actually did my undergraduate here at Berkeley, 01. Yay! Come on. Wait, how many people are actually students here? I'm curious. Okay, a lot. So I was 01 here, and then I went and did my PhD at Stanford. Ooh. I did my PhD at Stanford in theoretical physics before, realizing that being a physicist is not really, that great. So try something else.
Hey, they were the original data scientists.
Huh? Yeah.
They were the original data scientists.
Physicists? Yeah. I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
My name is Kim Stedman, and I'm known for being contentious. I think there are a lot of original data scientists. Maybe that's something we can talk about. So, Kim Stedman, I work for a company called Motiga. I'm a data scientist in the video games industry. So, basically, my job is to do math to make games more fun. What else should I say about myself? I tend to focus on the social systems of data. So for all of the fantastical things that we can come up with technologically and mathematically, if nobody uses our stuff, then it's not worth much. So my question is, how do we integrate ourselves into the social cognition of the organizations we belong to and serve?
Cool. So I'm Elena Grewal. I'm a data science manager at Airbnb. I joined Airbnb 3 years ago when there were also 5 data scientists. We're not quite at 100 yet. We're at about 45, but maybe we'll get there soon.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's been a great experience kind of seeing how data science has evolved over this time period. We really see data as the voice of the customer, and so we think about using data to inform decisions across the company in every single department. And so right now I'm the manager of the team that works on our marketplace, which essentially is like the website where you match guests and hosts. So we work on things like the search ranking algorithm, the booking flow. We provide tools to hosts like pricing recommendations, and a wide variety of other types of projects related to increasing the efficiency of the marketplace.
Great, thank you. Like I said, I'm Cameran. I run the data science and analytics function at a startup called ThreadUp. If you haven't heard of us, we're a marketplace that matches, we buy and sell like new clothes for women and kids, list them online and sell through it all. Before that, I used to be at VMware and did enterprise social software there and did the data science behind that application, and actually started off my career at Disney using data to optimize their parks and resorts. So I think one of the big topics that we want to talk about today is really around hiring and finding the people to fit those jobs. And I know, Kim, I'm going to kick it off with you because I know this is a passion of yours. And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, the decisions you've had to make around hiring people, especially when there's a lack of people in the industry that have the skill set that you need.
So the decisions that we're mainly making about hiring people is that we can't, because we don't have enough money yet. You might be a good person to speak to the decisions you are making. But this is something that we struggle with. I've talked to a lot of people in various organizations struggling with it, and we've done it in the past in other companies. You and I talked about this together when we were at Strata. So we all know that there's a deficit of you guys, right? There is a huge deficit of people who are trained to be data scientists and who are qualified. And certainly, there's a massive deficit of people who are trained and have done it before, because it's new. So we have three choices when we hire. We can wait 5 years for programs like this to produce enough data scientists so that we can bring on qualified people, but we don't want to wait 5 years, right? We can bring on unqualified people and leave them unqualified, which is dangerous. Or we can bring on unqualified people and train them. Really, that's the only option that we have. So one of the questions that I'm always trying to answer when I look for people who have the potential to be excellent data scientists is, how do I identify them? Hi, Ari. I don't believe that it's looking for buzzwords and technological capacities. The person has to have a passion and a fundamental analytic capacity, and I don't know how to identify that in people. So I'm hoping that you guys who hire more than I do can give me some perspective.
Sure, you're looking at me, okay.
Yeah.
Great. So at Facebook, it's interesting. So the way that data science sort of evolved at Facebook, as I had mentioned when I started there weren't a lot of people there. This might be surprising to you. Back in 2009, there were 1,000 people at Facebook. We already had a news feed. You'd think that there are all these like crazy data people making that news feed awesome. No, it just basically like ranked by time. And that was, that was it. And then they showed everybody that. It took us a long time before it was a long time before we really sort of integrated the understanding of all the data we had into the product in ways other than merely showing it to you, right? So that process really sort of happened in around like 2012, 2013 was when we ended up really hiring a lot of data people. The impetus for it was really actually going public, strangely enough. We go public and we suddenly realize, oh, we need to really understand in detail how every one of our changes that we make to the site actually affects users. In order to do that, we need to hire people who can do that type of analysis. So we ended up going into this huge thing, hiring a bunch of them. We built out this whole program, and I think at one point hired 80 of them in 1 year. It was really pretty intense. The way I think about it, I guess the way that I would frame it for students, we hired a lot of new grads. There are kind of three areas that we look for, and we wanted candidates to be above the bar on all three, and preferably great at least one or two of them, right? The three areas are like technological proficiency, which is can you make the machine obey you, right? You're like, okay, I do this math on the board, can I make the machine do it? So technical proficiency. The next area is some sort of like business or product understanding. This actually turns out to be the tricky one. We get a lot of PhDs who are really smart, know a lot of statistics, but actually are unable to cleanly articulate what it is that the business needs to do to succeed. So your ability to articulate that cleanly and clearly and understand it and use that as the means by which you prioritize your work is actually like a really important thing. One of these pillars. The third pillar is sort of the formal statistics, scientific aspect, which is of course very important. Those are kind of the three areas that we think about. And then different candidates tend to be better or worse at some. So if we hire PhDs, they tend to be good at science, pretty good at getting the computer to understand or to behave, but the middle one there, the business understanding tends to fall short. So that's almost always the thing where we're like filtering on. Flip side, if we hire like ex-PMs or people who have come from consulting, they're really good in the middle, but they may or may not be good on the other end. So we really look at it that way in terms of like the bar and then getting people who are above the bar on all of them. I still use this rubric when we hire data scientists in our portfolio companies. I advise about 20, maybe 10 to 20-ish companies in our portfolio that we've hired just in the last year, probably 10 data scientists, and I always look at it from that point of view. And as people get more senior, it's just that the kind of bar goes up, and we want them to be even better and more experienced, but it's basically the same rubric that I continue to use.
That's cool. Well, it's interesting to hear because I would say there are a lot of parallels to how we do hiring at Airbnb. We definitely look for all three of those characteristics too. Similarly, have gone through a cycle of hiring many people, and an interesting feature I think of our early data science team as well is that a lot of us, it was our first job. Like for me, it was my very first job, and now I was tasked with hiring and interviewing lots of people. And so, I think that lent itself to us being maybe a little more creative too in how we were doing our hiring, because we knew that none of us had stocks of questions that we had asked hundreds of candidates where we had calibrated on what we would look for and then see how people did. And so what we realized is that what we wanted was an interview process that would test how people would actually perform on the job along those different dimensions, and also a test that would give people who are interviewing a great sense of what it was like to work at Airbnb. And so we kind of moved away from this older model of one-on-one interviews, maybe with some brain teasers, and we created what we call the on-site data challenge, which actually is now being adopted by other companies, which is cool to see. Nice. And so essentially, we have people come in and they are given our data. So we have a laptop with our data, or they can use their own laptops too. And we give them a problem that we've actually had to try and answer in our work. And it's a problem where it's something you could spend a day on, or you could spend 3 months on. So it's pretty open-ended, and you can really take it in many different directions depending on what your expertise is. And so it's an interesting test of where are people's strengths, because that's usually where they go. And then at the end of the day, they actually present to a small group of people what they've done, walk through their code, and then take it to also making product recommendations. So that's part of the task is
Nice.
Do this analysis, and then what would you tell the product team they should do based on this analysis? And so it really gets at all three of those characteristics really well, where you see, can someone process the data, can they clean it, can they code to do their analysis, do they have statistical expertise to be able to make rigorous conclusions from the data, and then can they communicate it and have actually actionable insights from that data. And so we found it to be really, really great, actually. What we see of people's on-site has reflected very strongly what they can do when they come on the job. So we have a clear picture of what they can do. And we've also gotten really positive feedback from candidates as well, that it gives them a great perspective on what it's like to work here. We have them actually sit with a buddy. So they have a buddy for the day. So they're in our office space. And so, you can be pick up the culture of the place, see if you actually like it. And so we found that to also be good because we also all see the same thing. So it helps for interview calibration, because you're I hear what questions the other person asked, I know how they answered, we can all round up at the end with the same amount of information.
I should point out the Airbnb method is actually fantastic. We lost a couple of candidates to Airbnb, and they told me about this, and I was like, oh my goodness, these guys have it all figured out. They have a very good system. Hard to replicate.
Question about that though. Yeah. I hear slightly different themes in you than in you. You seem to be, you're talking about there being 3 areas of expertise, and you're going to get some people who are good here and weak here, and it seems like you're looking for more of a perfectly rounded data scientist.
Well, it kind of depends, right? But the interview process allows people to demonstrate their areas
where
of expertise.
their area is.
Exactly. So then, on the hiring side, we can say, well, we have a need for someone with this particular expertise,
right?
And then we can kind of bring someone who shows that.
One thing that I hear a lot of people talking about is it's not realistic to look for people who can do all of those things at once. And we're still trying to have the conversations about how you structure data science teams such that people can benefit from each other's expertise without everyone having to be identical.
Jonathan, one of the points I thought that was really interesting that you talked about previously was about how you advise companies. So if you're a new company and you're making your first data science hire, you know nothing about data science, what are you telling these companies to help them be successful?
Sure, yeah. The first thing that I usually talk to companies about, especially early stage ones that are sort of in the process of hiring their first data scientist, is sort of level set on what the terminology means, right? So data science, the term is really fuzzy. I usually phrase it to them as, you don't hire computer scientists, do you? So why would you hire a data scientist, right? And they say, oh, that's a good point. And I point out to them, companies, especially small companies, they really are hiring people to achieve business objectives, right? Their goal is to win as a company, and the data scientist is only useful insofar as, they contribute to that. So usually, like, that's the starting point, as opposed to, that might sound obvious here, but a lot of times I start with, oh, I need to hire somebody to build amazing models for me because I need predictive models. And it's like, well, is that what you really need? What you need is business success, and what that means is, here are the 5 things that you can do, and maybe a predictive model helps, or maybe you can hire a data scientist to help decision making across the organization. But it really varies from company to company, and they need to think very closely about what it means, what it is that they need. Frankly, most companies out there, most small companies, data science is not really core to what they do. And that's okay. They can be successful. They can be very successful. Most companies are plenty successful without having amazing statisticians on board. But that doesn't mean that they can't value from having somebody who's good at data on board. Usually the difficulty there is making sure that the person has the appropriate understanding of what the business does and what the what the key objectives are for that company that the company needs to do to succeed. And being able to articulate that, like I said before, is really the most important thing. So I usually help them on that front, help them figure out how to form that, and then as we bring candidates in, help them to measure that aspect. This aspect of understanding the core mission and understanding how to really go beyond core data science to help the company succeed. Because especially at a small company, people who are hired as data scientists tend not to be just data scientists. They tend to be sort of all manner of stuff. Data infrastructure, data visualization, half PM, sometimes a marketing person. Sometimes they do user acquisition with ads, which is conventionally thought of as internet marketing. And early data scientists tend to do all of these things, and hiring people who are willing to do all these things, you don't have to be expert in all of them, but willing and interested in doing all of these things ends up being sort of the key thing. People who are really flexible, really smart, and really driven to help the company succeed at whatever it is they're trying to do.
Okay, so now you've hired people, and you've got some brilliant, PhDs. How do you keep them engaged? Because sometimes I know that the needs of my company is really basic, and sometimes it's really advanced. And how do you balance those to make sure that people are enjoying their job and the job's meeting their expectations?
Especially because it can be so hard to get that plane off the ground. Oh my God, just getting the technology marshaled and the data in a working order. What is it, the understanding is that it's 90% of the time data cleaning and 10% doing analysis?
It's
And
80-20, not 90.
okay, all right.
But still, 80 is not sexy of data cleaning.
right.
That's not the sexiest job.
And you got to go to work, and not only do you have to just sit there and create a lookup table for 6 hours, but you have to somehow manage expectations on the other side, as well as you being bored on one side. You don't want your internal customer being bored either. So,
Correct.
what do you think?
Something that's been really successful at ThreadUp is we've gone out to find tools that can do the basics automatically for our business partners so that they can make the key decisions that they need to, and I don't have to do the basics for them, and I can then do more of the advanced work that the company actually gets more return on investment of my time doing more sophisticated things. So unfortunately, some of those tools aren't necessarily plug and play yet, and there is a lot of work to get them set up. We use Looker, which has been really helpful for us. We're looking at another company called Interana that's a new startup of really helping our end users understand how people flow through our e-commerce platform.
Has anybody experimented with hiring junior scientists to just do the cleaning?
So we haven't hired junior data scientists to just do the cleaning, but we built out what we call the data engineering team, which is a set of engineers who specialize in ETL. So essentially building data pipelines to create this data warehouse that has extremely clean, well-structured data that's consistently organized. And that has been transformative for enabling us to move really quickly and not spend a ton of time cleaning data. That was something that we didn't have initially, but we've been really excited about being able to build that out.
Do you mind if I throw a quick one? I warned you guys, I talked about it. So we do that too, and I agree, it's fantastic, it's a great idea. I find it very difficult as a person who, games companies turn over really regularly, so data science teams are always small and they're always new. So as a person who goes into a company and helps set up a data science department, trying to describe the amount of work that's involved in getting that smooth and the amount of expense and lead time and expertise, I struggle with that. So I'm interested to hear how people answer that question too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, that can be really bad. I mean, it's something even at Facebook where we have, one way to think about Facebook, or here's a way to think about data logging, which is something that kind of we're all talking about implicitly. There's this interesting phenomena, Facebook has all these users using the site and it produces all this log data, right, enormous amounts of it. And you'd say, oh, maybe the amount of data, scales as the number of users, and it does. But it actually scales as the number of users times the number of engineers. Because roughly, like, for every 5 engineers, they add more logging, and that means you have, like, that logging for every user. So you have this, like, horrible problem. This is what we went through at Facebook, where, like, the amount of data was just, like, proliferating at a rate far, far faster than the user growth. And as you know, the user growth at Facebook is very strong. So you end up having to stop and be like, okay, we need to hire people to like clean this up and to like keep it sane, and it's really tough, and we have this entire internal system at Facebook where like when people add logging data, there are sort of guardrails in place to keep them from making too much of a mess, but they're still a mess. And it's a trade-off inside the company, right? You have this question of, well, do we overly constrain engineers so that they only do things perfectly, but then they won't log anything and you won't get anywhere? Or do you let them completely go nuts? So like you want something in the middle, right? And it kind of goes back to like creating the right culture inside the company where they understand the value of the thing and they have some baseline understanding of how the data team is going to use it, so that you can minimize the bandwidth from other people, both data scientists and data engineers, for cleaning the data. This is kind of in the weeds, I think.
I mean, it's definitely a tough question, though, because, I mean, even we have this team of data engineers, but again, it comes down to, like, are the engineers logging the right stuff, right? Even if you have really great cleaning, if there's not the right data there, it's not going to help you. And so a lot of the data scientists are actually now pretty actively involved in scoping out logging with the engineers, just because they're like, if we don't do that, like, we don't know if we're going to get the data we need. And so I think that's where it is really important in the hiring process to, like, kind of make sure that people are willing to get their hands dirty a little bit and aren't like, I only want to run machine learning models and I'll never clean data, because like that's just not going to end up with a good model if you have shitty data. So like, being willing to like do that careful work to make sure that the data is clean is really important. And actually that's something we look forward to again in the interview process, where you could probably spend the entire interview cleaning data and we might still hire you because we'd be like, wow, like you care so much about data quality. That's amazing.
You almost want someone that geeks out about owning that data set and knowing every single record and understanding what, I mean, to scale obviously, but understanding what it really says. And that's a lot of my job, is just exploring the data and really knowing it and matching it to the business process. So I understand exactly how my ops team is processing the items that we receive and how it flows through the system, which is extremely detailed, but knowing that through the data is really key.
Yeah, there is definitely a large component, larger than any of us want there to be, about trying to create organizational workflows so things don't go off the rails. I don't know how many times I've been looking at a data set and I'm trying to do an analysis, and in the middle I'm like, wait a minute. And then it becomes this constantly unpacking organizational process of these guys are doing this and I'm talking to here and there's nobody connecting them, and it goes on and on and on. So you have to have something set up to catch those before they get too bad. And
so I would say at an early stage company, you're not going to have that luxury. You're going to have to create that luxury. So if you guys are thinking about where you might want to go in terms of your data career, smaller companies, you get to define it. You get to define everything, how the company looks at the metrics, how you're going to do these processes, but you have to define it. And you have to go through the painstaking work of getting people on board. A larger company has a lot of that stuff defined already. And you have the data pipelines that are pretty strong. You have a good historic amounts of data. So just thinking small versus big as well that way. Yeah. So it looks like we have about 10 minutes left, and we want to make sure that people in the audience have the time to ask questions. And so we're going to turn it over to you guys. And so people are passing mics pretty soon.
So this is a question that's come up amongst my peers a number of times. And I'm not sure if this is the right panel, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. If you're in a company that's not like a data native company, sometimes when you have a data science idea or you want to contribute, there's a lot of pushback. And I know you guys are probably at the other end of this spectrum, but I'm wondering if even if in your own companies, your data science group has pushback from people who want to just use, very basic methods.
Yeah, I can feel that one. I think, this is something that I've seen a lot, where people, data scientists are like, oh, I have this great thing I want to do. It's amazing, et cetera, et cetera. It kind of goes back to that sort of middle pillar that I was talking about, sort of understanding the core goals of the company, right? Like, if you view the company like from the point of view of management or from the point of view of the owners of the company, right, what they fundamentally want is like success. And it needs to be very clear to them. When you make a decision as to like how to allocate people, you have to have some idea of like, if I put bandwidth over here, I'm going to get this kind of return. If I put bandwidth over here, I'm going to get this kind of return. So really the challenge there is really coming up with the right articulation to make sure that it is indeed clear that the return on this type of investment would be better than taking engineers to build another feature or to do something else, because there's many, for any company, the number of things that they want to do and that they could do far outnumbers the number of things that they have the capacity to do. So they have to prioritize, and fundamentally that prioritization has to be around like, creating business value. And it is oftentimes the case where, like a lot of these data projects don't, they might be fun, but they may or may not, obviously deliver business value, or at least it is on the individual to make a case for why it will deliver that kind of value. Does that answer kind of?
I would like to underscore every word that he just said and also come at it from a different direction. Can you guys hear me okay? I just messed up my mic. Yeah? Good? All right. So you say we're probably coming from the opposite end of the spectrum. I am not. Like, in my company, it's my job to advocate for the use of data. And with gaming in general, like, they're just adopting data because it used to be you'd put a game in a box, somebody would buy it, and you're done. But now we're at the point where we have free-to-play games, which means we need to maintain an engagement with the user and to satisfy their needs for the foreseeable future. When I came into this and I saw how poorly data had been adopted in gaming, I thought, I'm going to fix this. Like, I'm going to teach everybody how to use data. And I am still doing that. But one of the things that I've accepted in the process is there is an art here. I think it's true of every product. It is definitely true of games. And there's a certain point where I just need to back off and let them do it, because they have an instinct for this that I don't possess. And the fine line for me is finding out where to push and where to pull back and let them be artists.
I'm good. I echo everybody here. Yeah. I think we're all pretty like-minded.
Yeah, question, you'd started off by saying that there's a shortage of data scientists, and you then proceeded to kind of describe what you do today to kind of hire, and it seemed to be tailored to the people who graduate from programs like this and other similar programs. But have you entertained, or are you in a process of trying to maybe do some internships to take some of the talent you have in the room and kind of go with the flow as they are learning and going through their program, that they're also adapting to your environment? And I mean, there are companies like GE, Cisco, they're all developing data science programs from within the company because there's not enough there's not enough people to fill all the positions. What are you doing, or are you doing anything in the area of internships?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I actually advise for a company called the Insight Data Science Fellowship. So these guys specifically take new grad PhDs and effectively do like a boot camp of data science. And then when they get out, they join companies as new grads. And new grads aren't really, like, these tend to be new grads with like PhDs in some random science with like a little bit of programming ability. And this program basically gives them some sort of baseline and then introduces them to companies, and then companies interview them. The question of, so that's kind of like a quasi-internship, because when you get one of these new grads, they aren't like fully formed, right? They still take some work. The question of internships is an interesting one. In our portfolio companies, we have some software engineering internships, but we usually don't have the bandwidth to hire also data science internships. The reason has to do more with scale, right? Like if you think about an organization and a function, you have a bunch of engineers. If you have 4 engineers, you can't take an intern. If you have 10 engineers, maybe you can take an intern. Once you have 40, oh yeah, you can take interns. So at Facebook, we started doing interns for data science at around 30, which follows that rubric, and which also most engineering organizations tend to function like that also. They start taking on interns at around 20 to 30. So the number of companies that have that much data science going on, that they have 30 plus, is not that many. But most of them do some form of interns. I assume that Airbnb does, right?
Yeah, we also just started actually this past summer was our first round of interns, and now we're having our second round this coming summer. So similar timing in terms of internships. And I mean, I think to Kim's point though, like these programs like this one have not existed for very long. So at least at Airbnb, I mean, a lot of the people who work as data scientists now didn't have any data science preparation. I mean, we have people, one guy on our team was a professional poker player before he started. Other people have like all kinds of different backgrounds that have brought them to this work where they were analytical, thinking about problems, and so they gained a skill set that would be really useful in data science, but they didn't go through a data science training program.
So I don't have a PhD. I'm a former anthropologist. The person that I work with is a former biologist. He doesn't have a PhD either. We don't look for people with PhDs when we're talking about small gaming companies, because when we do, they get bored and we don't know how to utilize them. Like for the smaller company, you're just trying to bring in people in the beginning to close the gap and create the systems and perform the basic analysis, introduce the company to thinking by having that data feedback loop. So for us, it's not about, one, it's not about finding people who are hyper-educated. It's about finding people who have the core capacity and to helping bring them up. And honestly, the way that I do that is I work with people and I interact with people offline. And when I see someone who is really analytic and gets a problem and just takes it by the teeth and starts to rip it apart, looks for their own resources, I basically leave a trail of Skittles from their desk to my desk and start saying, you know, wouldn't it be great if we worked together all the time? And then we casually educate ourselves. We set aside actually on our team 15% of our time for training, and we use self-directed training because we don't have the bandwidth to bring in somebody to teach us, and we all need to know different stuff. So we do a sort of informal internship for everybody we bring on.
Hi. Oh.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. And as I've been listening to all of these presentations, a question has been growing in my mind about what is good data science. I mean, I feel like in math, where I come from, you know, there's an idea of elegance or whatever. In business, maybe it's bang for the buck. And I'm really curious about what each of you thinks, or how would you characterize good data science? As somebody who would be looking for a job in data science, I would kind of want to be able to have some tools to assess, are they doing good data science here? Because that would be where I would want to go. Yeah. And then on a different level, I'm also curious about characterizing the kinds of data science, or, you know, each company probably has a character of data science that they do. And I'd be interested in hearing about that as well.
Absolutely. So I would go back to understanding the business need of being a good data scientist. So if I'm in an early stage company and we're just starting out, I don't need someone to spend 5 months building a model because I just lost all my funding and I can't employ you anymore. And so I want someone to do something quick. I want quick wins at that level. If I'm at a Disney, which I used to be at, we would spend days to make decisions because we had the luxury to do that, and we could get really detailed along that. So I think it's somebody who really understands the needs of the company and can match their level of effort to that. Sometimes I say, your 80% is my 100% right now. But I come from an early stage kind of company background more so. And so I need to get people who will do things quickly, and we can get quick wins out of it, the low-hanging fruit. So it just depends on which company you're at and being really aware of your surroundings and what the needs are. In terms of types of data science, I'm going to actually let somebody else speak here.
Sure, yeah, there's a lot of different types of data science at Facebook, so that's a good example. The term is really broad. I mentioned that earlier. I didn't really go into it. Usually when I talk to people about sort of the variety of things that can go under the banner of data science, usually I think about the world of like, there's a side of data science that's really more like engineering, which is that you are building a product that uses data to do something, right? Like feed ranking in Facebook, or ads ranking, or possibly ranking of results in Airbnb. There's probably a data scientist under the hood there doing something crazy. But that's really more like engineering, right? Because fundamentally that's what it is. You're building a product that has to function. It has to function well. It has to have high uptime, be fast, so on and so forth. And then there's the other branch, this other end of the spectrum, which is much more like business operations. So companies typically have, like, when they hit a certain size, they have this notion of like a business team, which usually involves some form of marketing people, a finance person, and usually there's a few people under there who are really thinking about the business side of things. Are we making money? How are we making money? You want to build this feature? Cool. How much is it going to cost us? How much money are we going to make from it? And really data science can be anything in between, right? At Facebook, we ended up having a lot of people kind of in the middle who were kind of like, like PMs, sort of like product management, because the product, the Facebook product, has a lot of product features on it and that require management, and thus you need people who are sort of sensitive to that. That's where the bulk of effort is. But it's different at different companies. You know, like at Uber, like I know that they have a lot of people who are on the building side because they have to build this system that does this very complicated routing. So they have a bunch of people that do that. The pure product stuff, there are fewer of them because the product at this point doesn't have all of this, you know, proliferation of features. So they end up having fewer. So it's really different from company to company, depending on what they're doing. And fundamentally, it goes back down to like, you know, is the company winning or not? Because really that's what you want. Like, do you want to work for a company that is a great data science company, or do you want to work for a rocket ship, right? You probably want to work for a rocket ship.
I want to make sure I understand your question right before I try to address it. Are you saying, like, you're a data scientist and you're interviewing around and you want to make sure you're with a company who's doing it well? Is that what you're saying?
Or in a way that I like.
In a way that you like, right.
Is satisfying aesthetically, or I don't know what. I mean, I'd like to hear what your perspectives are on
Sure.
what the possible satisfactions can be from doing the job well.
So, you know, I just talked about how I feel like it's important for, you know, to varying degrees with various environments for us to back off and let the artists do their thing, the designers do their thing. The other side of that is sometimes you join a company that's really gung-ho about having a data department and they are completely unprepared to make any decisions based on what you come back with. So even though it's a great gig and you make a lot of money and they have great data, that's not going to be satisfying for very long. So I'm not sure exactly how you interview the company to identify that, but one thing that I'm always looking for is you know, I want to meet the group of people who are going to make choices based on the stuff that I return. And if they seem like they're receptive to having feedback, awesome. If they don't, you're dead in the water.
I'd say that your gut is actually a really good Bayesian computer. You go in with some like prior about a company, you're like, oh, I think this company's good. You like gather random evidence while you're interviewing, and your gut's probably going to tell you the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? That's me being a
You don't want to go someplace that they don't value your work. That it's not something that they're going to put money into because you're just going to sit in a corner and produce results and no one's going to look at them.
Seriously.
Yeah. It's not fun. Been there, don't do it.
It sounds like it's going to be fun, but it's really not.
No.
Like, you just can't stand it. And if you're the sort of person who can enjoy doing analysis and not have anybody look at them, you're probably in the wrong field. Yeah.
So when you look for data science things, when you look for data science jobs on like LinkedIn and stuff like that, one thing that's very intimidating about them is it seems that they're written by people who don't know what they're talking about, so they list every possible technology that could ever be involved, and sometimes they demand more years of experience on a product than it has existed for. And another thing that's intimidating about those is they say something that you guys seem to echo, where almost all of them say a master's degree is required, PhD preferred. So, but that seems to me to be an artifact of the fact that there's no formal training, or at least not until a couple years ago, of like master's level data science programs. And you guys have said the same sort of thing where like everybody's mentioned PhDs at some point. Do you think that that's changing, or is it really mandatory to be taken seriously to pursue an advanced academic degree?
Can I talk first? Okay. So I spoke to this once in an Ignite talk that I gave a while back, where I described, you know, at that point I was being hit up by 11 different companies via their recruiting departments, and they were looking for everything. They had no idea what they needed. For the most part, it was companies who had new data science departments because they're not as big and established as the people on both sides of me. And I described it as the data platypus, which is actually made up of like 5 different animals in different roles. And when I became very frustrated with that. And then after I talked more to the people who are doing the recruiting, they're miserable. They've never hired anybody who does this before. If you just draw them out a little bit, they're the first to acknowledge they have no idea what they need. Like, even if there is somebody in the company who does know, the recruiter has no idea. And like, honestly, they're just desperate to bring somebody in. So I think that since we are the people who hold the expertise, it is up to us to educate the people who are looking for us on what they actually need, and that involves a dialogue. What they're doing right now is they're going online and they're plugging in the buzzwords. They're looking for PhD, statistics, big data technologies. And that's not necessarily going to get them what they need. That's why I think the job descriptions all paint this incredibly impenetrable view of what people need. I think it's not what they need, and I think they don't know that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So I write a lot of these job descriptions. I've written several. There's some interesting game theory behind a job description, right? Like the thing you're describing about data scientists is actually true for everything, right? Like, you know, they say, oh, we want a marketing person with 10 years of experience. Oh, we want a person with a bachelor's degree in computer science. You know, like software engineers in the US, only about like half have degrees in computer science. The other half are all sorts of stuff, right? And oftentimes when I put out these job recs, I usually say something like, you know, when I'm chatting with the company, I'm like, let's say this, because the thing is, what we really want, we want people to see this and be like, I don't care. I think that what you're doing as a company is so important for the world, I'm just gonna apply. And I don't care that I don't have these requirements because you're gonna want me anyway. And if they come to me and convince me of that, man, I'm so happy. Because I would much rather them come to me and like really want to work on this problem, ignoring the data science bit, but really want to work on the thing the company is doing and like are willing to learn anything. I'll take that person all day over the guy who has like all these degrees and is ambivalent. You know, like there's definitely like this sort of like mercenary aspect to a lot of these fields. It's not just data science, it's software engineering also. People who are just really good at technology and will do it for the right amount of money. And that's cool, but like, and you know, there's a place for that, but companies almost always prefer somebody who is passionate about what they're doing, because like that's what these companies thrive on, is like core passion for the thing that the company is trying to do for the world.
And so many companies are lost with data science. If you can provide some direction, they'll thank you for it.
I think we're actually, unfortunately, at our time limit, but I think everybody here would be very willing. I know you guys have a break next to stay up here if there's more questions and help answer any of your questions. But thank you guys so much for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.